Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Camp. Now.
Hey, Jack, I can hear you.
Well, I'm fine. I just want to tell you that we miss you in person.
Thank you.
We're always glad to be able to see you there, but we'll be happy when you can come back.
I plan to come back next month. I think that'll be a good time to come back.
Great plan. Not, but we want you to, you're welcome to come back next Monday, but we want you to come back next month too.
I think I said next month, but...
yeah, well, that's my hearing, sorry.
Yeah.
Not just his.
Okay, we're good to go if you guys want to get started. Jolie is maybe joining us. She said she was going to attend.
I call this meeting of the Oxford Historic Preservation Commission to order. We're glad to have our commissioners with us and folks who are joining us here at City Hall. We're glad to have you as well. The next item on the agenda is the approval of our agenda that we have received several days ago. Is there a motion to approve this agenda?
Yes. So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. 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 All opposed by the same sign. Next item on the agenda is the approval, welcome, is the approval of the minutes from our most recent meeting of April 19, 2021. The minutes, we have all seen the minutes. They've been sent to all of us. Is there a motion that we approve those minutes as presented?
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Let me just comment that I thought the minutes were really well done. Covered everything clearly and looked very good. Thank you. With that said, all in favor of approving the minutes from April 19, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed by the same sign. We now come to the public hearings part of our agenda. The first one on the agenda is for case number 618, requested by Griffin Tanner to demolish the existing building at 1401 Buchanan Avenue. We've had involvement with this residents with this structure in the past, and it seems like it's coming to conclusion. Kate, would you set it up for us?
Sure. There are quite a few things that are a little bit different than normal here, so just hang with me. The first item is that you'll note there were a couple of areas in the report that had a red correction with a strike through. We had a little bit of a transcription error with Municode, who hosts our code online. But anyway, that's been fixed. We've sent it off to them, but that's why you'll see a couple of red areas there. So the applicant today, I'm going to take you guys through the staff report, and then Corey Alger is here to present about the demolition of this building. 1401 Buchanan is a non-contributing structure in the South Lamar Historic District. I'm sure all of you are familiar with it because we looked at plans for potential demolition and new construction at this property in April and May of 2019 that were not approved. The plan today, what the applicant is requesting, is permission to demolish the existing building and install fencing and landscaping, which is slightly different than the demolition cases we've been seeing recently. When an applicant chooses to do so, that places a 48-month moratorium on building on that lot as prescribed in the ordinance. And I included that portion of the ordinance in your report. A couple of things have changed since we received an updated plan from the applicant since the staff report was written. So that first condition of well, first of all, staff is recommending approval of the demolition based on the condition of the house and based on Chris Carter's report, which was included in y'all's packet. The first condition of approval, that a vinyl coated chain link fence is installed instead of a proposed windscreen fence. The applicant did update that on this version of the drawing that you're seeing. But the other three conditions, that shrubs or other plants are installed to screen the proposed fencing, that the required landscaping bond is provided, and that the required restrictive covenant is filed prior to the issuance of a demolition permit, are still recommended as conditions of approval by staff. You'll note that on the second page of the staff report, we have the 4 criteria that you'll need to discuss to consider whether or not the building should be demolished. The commission shall consider the individual architectural, cultural, and/or historical significance of the resource. The commission shall consider the importance or contribution of the resource to neighboring property values. The commission shall consider the difficulty or impossibility to reproducing such a resource because of texture, design, material, or detail. And then the fourth we redacted because it was only relevant to commercial property. When we're in a case like this, that the applicant is proposing a landscaping plan rather than a new design, they'll have to provide a bond and covenant as shown in the staff recommendations. Running concurrently with this whole process and application from the applicant is the fact that so I noted in the staff report that we've received more calls than I've ever seen about this property from the neighborhood. The police have been called there several times. It's just kind of reached a critical mass after the application was pulled last month for demolition. And so the city has also condemned the building, so that means our code enforcement has condemned the building based on its condition. And so that process is running concurrently with this process. So if the applicant, for some reason, was not approved today, the city will find a contractor and have the building removed and have it assessed back to the homeowner's property taxes. So basically what we're hearing today is the opportunity for the applicant to remove the building on their own terms, like with their own contractor. So I hope that that covers everything. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have. Yeah, I'm not sure. We never received a request from anyone to initiate that process. The city didn't initiate that process. You know, we did hear plans for it a couple of times prior to the pandemic, so I think things were moving for a while, and then, you know, nothing ended up happening with those plans.
But either way, whether the city demolishes it or it's approved tonight, there's that 48 month
Yes.
moratorium either way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Jolie Nichols has recused herself from this case.
Okay.
For the record.
Thank you.
Do any of the commissioners have any other questions for Kate about this?
Hey, Kate, this is Kent.
Uh-huh.
Hey, does the 48 months run with the property? If it's sold, it still runs with the property, right?
Yes, it's a covenant that runs with the property.
Okay, thank you.
So, might Corey respond to questions that we might have?
What? Yeah. Yeah, cool. I mean, I just remember when you presented your plans a couple of years ago. Is there a reason why there are no plans presented on that property today, or?
Truth be told, we had the house sold with that design, and when the design was kind of being altered a little further than they wanted to be altered, they just paused, and then the corona hit, so we're about a year doing nothing. The house has not improved any, and so we agree with the recommendations. I got it out to bid right now to be demolished.
So,
They go
Corey,
out there, they think it's a little house until they walk up and they look down,
yeah.
Right.
and so they're going, oh.
So, Corey, I'm sure you're glad this is your last at-bat on this property.
I have a feeling I'll be back.
Just for the record, you the owners, by way of you, are agreeing to the vinyl coated chain link fence.
Yes, sir.
And landscaping to be
And the
put
recommendations, 100%.
in front of the vinyl fence.
Exactly what the staff recommendations are, they're in agreement.
That the required landscaping bond is provided.
Yes.
and the required restrictive covenant is filed prior to the issuance of a demolition permit.
Correct.
Great, thank you very much.
Sure.
Kate, do we need to, again, for the record, it's in the document, do we need to talk about the reasons, the considerations before demolition of property?
Sure, I read through those requirements. You guys are welcome to discuss them, but we did read them into the record. So now would, I guess, be the time for anyone to comment on those.
Does anyone have any comments about the meeting of the 4 criteria that we should consider before voting to whether or not to demolish?
None of the criteria dictate in favor of anything other than demolishing it, in my view. I've considered all of them. Don't see any reason to keep it. Just let's approve the application.
Anybody else have any question or comment? If not, the chair would entertain a motion to grant the demolition based on the property owner's agreement to follow all recommendations from the staff.
I make that motion.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any other discussion? If not, all in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed by the same sign? Thank you. Next item on our agenda is public hearing for case number 620, certificate of appropriateness requested by Lisa Towery for renovations to the existing building, including installation of a new patio roof, installation of shutters, replacing existing doors, installation of fencing, and to paint the existing brick at 353 North 15th Street. Kate.
Okay, great. And just a note for the record that Commissioner Little has recused from this case. So this is an application for a rather new house in the historic district in the Madison Square condominium subdivision. And to be honest, this would have been administrative approval if it were not for the request to paint the unpainted masonry. As you guys know, we've considered a case of that recently. And so anyway, I wanted to give everyone the opportunity to discuss and also to have it on the record, since we have been leaving sort of a trail of either approvals or denials based on the status of the property. The applicant requests approval to make several changes, including adding shutters to the French doors that flank the front entry, replacing existing metal doors with all wooden glass doors, extending their courtyard patio, and installing a hot tub, which you see the concept plan for that here. The rear changes are not going to be highly visible. I don't know if you guys have ever gone past these condominiums, but there's a gate sort of at the end of the drive that leads to the rear alley of all of the houses, and this property is 3 houses in, so I don't think that any of those rear changes are going to have a discernible impact in the historic district or on the street. The main thing that we'd like for you all to discuss is the request to paint the currently unpainted brick veneer. It's a brick house, let's see, with a front gable that's painted. They're scrolling up to it, right there. You know, this falls into the category of, you know, it's a non-contributing building. It's actually much newer than any of the ones we've considered recently. And, you know, it's a brick veneer. You know, I reiterate in the report that, you know, staff personally and based on the guidelines is not a huge fan of painting unpainted masonry just because of the maintenance issues that can arise, but in this instance, we found it acceptable based on the previous commission decisions. The building's not contributing, it's not a historic brick, so we are recommending approval based on those recommendations, those previous cases. I did note in the report that this house sits very close to a recent denial request to paint the brick. It was at 1510 Madison Avenue, and that home was a 1930s non-contributing structure. So just to remain consistent, I wanted to give you guys an example of a case which was the house we approved on Johnson Avenue in the March 2021 meeting, that was non-contributing. The commission approved the request to paint. The 1510 Madison Avenue case in March 2020, the house was contributing. The commission denied the request. So that's kind of where we stand.
And who is here representing the homeowner? I'm asking that primarily because part of our process is that somebody representing the homeowner.
I am that home member, Lisa Cowery, and the person that will be doing the work is the
Ms. Howard, we're glad to have you with us. Thank you. We've heard the presentation from Kate about this, and I think the point of discussion, if there is any discussion, is about painting the exterior. And this house falls kind of between two variations. One, new construction, which we don't question whether they paint the brick or not, really. And a historic home, which we do our best to consistently protect unpainted brick. So with that understanding, the floor is open for questions and discussion.
I have a question about what do we mean by historic brick? I mean, is there like a time, or I see, yeah.
There's not like an agreed upon cutoff in the guidelines or anything like that, but when you're talking about primarily like pre-1900s brick, even into the 20s and 30s, that's going to be a softer brick just based on how it was fired. And a lot of times when you paint brick, particularly load-bearing brick, let's say it's not a brick veneer, you're like the mortar joints in between the brick are meant to breathe. Like those are more porous than the brick, so that moisture can flow through the mortar joint and not affect the brick. And so when you paint that kind of brick wall, you seal all of that in, and it creates a moisture issue behind the paint, and it starts to chip away and that kind of thing. So the reason there's no exact cutoff date is because all around the country people were building things at different times. Like we got styles later than say New York or whatever, or our brick firing wasn't as sophisticated as, you know, a bigger city. Anyway, so there's no like agreed upon date that it's fine to start painting brick. But I would say, obviously this house falls well outside of it. Yeah.
Are there any other comments about the brick painting issue or any other of the proposed changes and additions to the house? If there are not, is there a motion that we approve this certificate of appropriateness as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any other comment, question? If not, all in favor of approving the COA signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed by the same sign. The COA is approved. Thank you. And now we move on to a complimentary review of a potential new addition at 1701 Jackson Avenue East.
Okay, so we're all pretty intimately familiar with the Shaw House. I've included a little bit of information about its age. It's built circa 1860. I included the Historic Resource Inventory Survey for you guys to take a look at, as well as the proposed plans from the applicant. Since this is a complimentary review, we won't vote on the proposed design. They're simply here for feedback. So I'm going to let the applicant and his architect present without comment.
How y'all doing today?
Good, how are you?
I'm Dave Van Landegem, DV Homes. I'm a builder, investor here in town, and the idea is to basically bring this house back to life. I do not want to change anything on the front or the two sides whatsoever. If something needs to be replaced, it will be replaced with similar to the same materials, so there's no change. We got to bring modern amenities into the house, as in the addition we'll have a kitchen, we're adding bathrooms, but keeping everything true to form, true to date, as close as possible. So that's the idea. And Ty's the one designing everything, architect.
How's it going? Timothy Barn Designs, kind of new in town. I've been working with Frank Tendall for probably 6 years now, and so now I've went out on my own. Anyway, but yeah, so we're keeping the original structure. Do we have the plans? Can we pull them up? Okay, good deal. So you see it, essentially the original structure, leaving everything as is. A few minor changes here and there with the fireplaces, the flues, everything like that. We are going to basically leave the existing structure as is and add on to the rear and to the right side. Scroll down just a little bit more, the elevation.
It gets stuck sometimes. There we go.
There you go.
So there's proposed elevations. Obviously everything on this front stays the same. Leaving all windows intact. Gonna try to repair as much as we can. Some might have to be replaced. We'll just have to, so get in there and kind of look and see what needs to happen to that. Pretty low profile as far as the house goes.
Tell us what is included in the new addition.
So we're gonna have a master bathroom and a master closet. It's gonna be on the addition, and then we're gonna have family room, kitchen, mud room, pantry, laundry, 3-car garage, and storage, and then a back porch, and then we'll have a friend's entry on the side with a parking pad.
So is that addition covering the entire back of the house like that?
Yeah.
Is that what I'm saying on the plan view?
Yes, we're coming off, so
Yeah,
you're looking at the back of the house.
Well, I'm trying to look at the plan view now. So where the addition attaches to the back of the house, it covers that house 100% on that north side or the rear side.
About 99%.
On the rear, yes.
Yeah.
99.
We come off that.
Right, on the first floor. We're not.
So this is a masonry bearing structure, totally different from anything we build nowadays. So what holds what up? Are they connected to each other? Normally in an old house like this, you'd be a little separated, you have a small connector.
We're gonna, so the addition's its own structure. Completely different structure, conventional, all separate, except we're gonna have connecting walls.
So essentially the windows and doors that are on the rear now, it's essentially just gonna be cased openings that go into the new structure.
Well, I'm more from the point of view of preserving the house that's 100 and whatever years old. How do you preserve that house while you're digging all this stuff and adding this huge footprint against the back of the house? Because I guarantee it doesn't have a foundation. It has wide brick.
It's got a wide brick over
That's right, and
foundation.
it comes up to a wide, it's like 3 bricks deep, and then that's it.
Well, I'm curious also when.
Preserving it, they tend to get pretty fragile.
Sure. So I'm also curious as to the structure that was attached before. I think it was demo 2019. So how that was, the footings and stuff was poured for that. So obviously we're going to engineer out there and check all that out.
Are you guys familiar with John Lewis? So John Lewis is doing all of my structural engineering on this house.
You know, I'll follow up a little bit on Commissioner Little's question. We have recently had experience with an old house like this, and part of what the owner wanted to do had to do with, tampering with an area near the foundation.
Right.
And when that happened, it had a significantly adverse effect on the existing structure.
Right.
And hindsight for us, I think, was that if a licensed and bonded professional in historic work had been involved, perhaps the house could have been saved. And I think perhaps we're going to have the same concern about this. The structure that was back there, you know, taking it off, I'm sure, I mean, that's some consideration, and I suppose that experience helped you understand what's there or what's next to it. But I think what will be involved in building a new house back there will go way beyond taking off the log cabin that was on the back.
With the initial work to the existing structure, the demo that we have to do, exposing floor joists, stone joists, that opens you up to underneath the house, which is a little further away from the footings, right? So we can actually add supports to hold those walls up while we're doing the additions, while we're doing the attachments. I mean, that's...
You know, this is just a complimentary review, but I can project forward, and personally, to approve this, I probably am going to want to see a professional that has experience in doing what you're talking about doing, which is a very specific sort of professional.
Honestly, you know how it turns it out.
It's real sand.
So so basically it's limestone and sand. Oh, I'm sorry. It's limestone and sand. So obviously, and it's 1849. Somebody at some point, we need to go back and look at the history of it, had gone in and encapsulated the mortar with new mortar. And they also came down to like about 4 foot from the footing and basically slurred it. So they packed that in. That's a system. That's what we're going to do to the entire house. We're going to go back and we're going to cut into the existing mortar and replace it with new mortar to hold that old sand and limestone in. That's part of the restoration process for old mortar. That's something that we're going to do on the entire house, inside and out. The inside of the house is all plaster. Well, that plaster is just flaking and falling off on the inside of the house. We're going to demo all that, and we're going to do the same process inside. We're also going to take up the floors, take out the ceilings, expose all the wood structure to the brick, and then we're going to support all of that while we're doing additions, while we're doing the renovation to the existing structure. All that's going to be taken into account.
So at the end of the day, it's still a masonry bearing structure. Right?
Still a masonry bearing structure.
There's no provision to, and I'm not for that. I'm just asking, just to verify. You're not putting walls inside of it.
We're not adding any walls inside. We're taking some out. We're adding steel.
Like plaster the inside.
The idea is to possibly fur and sheetrock in order to allow electrical. There's a couple chase walls we're gonna have to build for plumbing. You know, we're gonna have to bring a little bit of modern amenities into the inside of this house. All the HVAC will be ran in the attic or underneath the house. It's all conventional. As far as structure goes for the wood into the walls, we're probably gonna have to add a lot of steel. That's where John's gonna come in and tell us what exactly we need to do once we have it demoed and exposed.
I think I share the same concerns that Joel does. This is a very old house. The structure is unknown. I'm assuming I don't know where John is, engineering of it. I just question whether the addition, and I understand and I'm sympathetic to adding modern amenities, but I just question, what if the addition was pushed back, 10 feet, 15 feet, and had a connector piece? So we're not getting into the existing house. You would still get your modern amenities, and I don't really remember how big the site is, but I feel like there's enough that if we pushed it away from the existing house, that might be better for trying to preserve what's there. Yes, that's kind of what I'm saying, and that's also encouraged by the design guidelines.
That's what I was going to say.
The
guiding principle for that.
and it's a clear demarcation between old and new. So you get the old house, you have the hyphen as they call it, and then you have the new modern amenities in a separate building that's not putting pressure on this 200-year-old house.
I think that's essentially the idea, is it not to do the footings and the additions towards the back and tie everything in?
Well, I think I'm talking about you know, a good bit, you know, that they're not touching, you know, they're not
Not touching at all.
They're not supporting, I'm talking like, you know, 10, 15, you know, I think you really need to have somebody look at the existing structure, at the footings, at that masonry wall, and give it a good barrier, whether it's 10 feet, 12 feet, I don't know. But that would give you a hyphen and then the existing structure, the new structure.
To expose the footings of the house right now, you have to tamper. I mean, you have to dig around them to you know, bring them to light to see what they actually are. That's something that we can do, you know, during the process. So that's something we need to do before we start construction of the new process to, you know, and get it inspected and get it engineered. That's something I'm definitely willing to do, which is really, you know, the right way to go about it.
Does it have a basement at all, any grade inside?
There's actually, there's an old live well right off the access in the back right corner of the house, or cistern or whatever they usually, a cistern in there, which is, it appears that somebody had gone in there recently and slurred it or cleaned it up, but that, I mean, that's concrete, which is kind of odd for, you know, that, out of brick, right? So I'm wondering, yeah, exactly. I'm wondering if it was brick and they just slurred it really thick to where you can't see the brick outline and the mortar joints.
Well, not to beat you up over, but when you're gonna point tough those brick, you're gonna like consult, do a lot of research on getting it correct. You know, you can't put Portland cement, not much.
Right.
Or your brick will fall and fall apart.
There's specialists that specialize in restoration, you know, restoring.
That's all I'm asking.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh, we're not going into this thing like, hey, we're gonna build this.
I mean, I just recently redid the Walter Place in Holly Springs. I'm sure you guys are aware of that structure. So, for that homeowner, and we essentially had, I mean, that was built in, you know, 1850, and so it was essentially the same concept as this structure is.
And I did everything, so
yeah.
Believe me, I've got a lot of experience. My hair turned white doing that.
Yeah, I mean.
Let me ask you what, what professional did you bring in with Walter Place to help direct what you were doing?
So, we got a guy from Jackson. His name is Mark, and he basically, he was a plaster and lath business, and, you know, that he did all our plaster, and I mean, you know, we spent over $300,000 just redoing all the plaster and lath on the house.
Well, let me just put into the conversation, considering how much money you will be spending on this and your desire to do it right, and I think you seem to be in agreement with what we've said, there is a resource in Mississippi that we work with, and that's the Mississippi Department of Archives and History, that has experts as good as any in the country that are available to come and consult, and I have no idea what the cost structure is, even if there is one. I mean, they're
familiar with the shop house as well. They're familiar with the shop house. I mean,
yeah, but this, you know, this house is as significant as any house in Oxford. Right. So I would feel better when you came back if you were holding hands with Archives and History.
Okay.
Take it pretty seriously, but, you know, we also want you to do your job. And it'd be great to see that place.
Sure.
Add on to and all that, but we just gotta.
Just for the record, I'm willing to do the legwork. I mean, I want to do it right.
I think we're all just a little weary because
Right.
of the past project, and
Right.
we would appreciate if you did your homework before and not during demolition.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're going to have to discover a few things during demolition. Anybody that's done renovation work to historic homes or newer homes, you find things.
We took an addition off in the back of the house, fell off. I'm here to tell you,
Yeah.
it turned my head away. It was one of the hardest things I've ever been through in my life, but I'm glad I did it, and then in retrospect, it was great, but at the time, it was terrifying, because it's 70 feet tall. But anyway, the point I'm making is, you can get yourself down a rabbit hole and hurry or something like that.
Yeah.
And there's probably a lot of folks around Oxford willing to, you know, do this for.
So talk a little bit about the design, the potential hyphen, definitely. Are there any other comments related specifically to the design?
Yeah.
The
of the proposed addition, excluding excavation, do we have any questions about that?
Well, my question was the separation.
Yeah.
And so,
So I hope you understand that we all want to be your ally and supporter and to help you be able to accomplish what your goal is. But we want to make sure that it's done appropriately. And if you were to come back requesting demolition, I'm not sure exactly what part of the back of the house would have to be demolished.
Nothing. A few trees.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
I mean, two trees that are encroaching on the house currently.
You would have to take,
The rear cabin addition was already removed,
all right.
so we're working with the original.
Well, I hope just you've gathered from comments that all across this table we've made that we are going to be more comfortable giving you permission to move forward if we feel comfortable with the level of professionalism involved with the excavation and so forth.
my main reason at this point was to come in and talk to you guys, get your input, know what you expect, right? So now that we know, we can move forward. Main thing was doing this before I purchased the house. So now that I know that it's acceptable, that you guys are willing to allow something in the future, you know.
And I think the
feel a lot
point
better about it.
Virginia,
I can get you what you need.
and the point Virginia made, I don't know whether that's another option, but it's certainly something that I think we appreciate as well. In this case, a real obvious hyphen between the original house and anything else that would be built.
Take that into consideration.
Yeah. And don't even come thinking about painting the brick.
Paint it white.
Oh yeah, we're gonna paint it white and smear the whole house.
Black window.
Yeah, that's right. Black windows,
Cover all his brick up.
modern doors,
Aluminum windows, yeah.
get rid of all the handrails.
That's the idea. Yes, sir.
And we appreciate your effort to come and do what we're doing now.
I've been kind of watching the house for a long period of time, and I know Jay Luna and Sid Bryan and they're the owners, and I've just been kind of watching it and seeing what's happening with it, and I know that I've got the ability to bring it back to life. It's just a matter of getting through the process and making everybody happy, and that's the idea, and that's what we're gonna do. So I appreciate y'all's time, and we'll get you what you need to move forward. All right.
Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate your time. Last item on the agenda is to adjourn. Is there any other business to come before this commission? Kate?
I just wanted to update y'all on the demolition by neglect that we initiated last meeting. We did send a letter, certified mail, to the address we could find for the applicant. We have not yet received anything back, even confirmation that she received the certified mail. So once the 30 days on that runs out, then we're probably going to attempt to make contact with the current tenants of the house and hope they can put us in touch with the landlord. So anyway, it hasn't fallen off the radar. We just have to let that 30-day period go before we move on. So
That's the shed on 14th Street.
yes, the shed, yeah, the garage structure, yes. But that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have anything they want to bring forward? If not, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Move, second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you.